We've just identified in Paul Colley's book some key macroeconomic elements in the poorest countries. In this video, we will go deeper into the link between globalization and poverty. At the end of the video, you should be able to understand who have benefited from the globalization process since 1988, but also who have been the losers. Some statistics from the World Bank confirm and complement Colley's analysis. In a World Bank research paper, Branko Milanovic has analyzed data on the change in real income after we remove inflation over the period between 1988 to 2008. This work is particularly precise since Milanovic provides data at different percentiles of global income distribution, dividing therefore the result by percent. The result confirms what was stated by Collier. The bottom billion has not proportionally benefited from globalization. We see that for the poorest 5% of the world population, the poorest, the increase in real income in 20 years is nil. In fact, what is particularly clear in Milanovic's analysis is that there are two groups that have clearly not benefited from the emerging globalization during these 20 years. The bottom poor in developing countries and the upper middle class. This upper middle class is a large group mainly formed of the middle class and upper middle class in Europe and North America. Does this mean that everything went bad between 1988 and 2008? That no one will benefit from these years of globalization? Not at all. Two other groups have benefited. The first one is the top percentile, the very rich, who have seen their revenues increase by 60% in real terms over this period. We learned a lot with Collier about the specificities of the bottom billion. But who are the people in the top percentile? Milanovic's survey explained that these are the richest 12% of Americans, the richest 3% of Brits, Japanese, Germans and French, and the richest 1% of Brazilians, Russians and South Africans. The obvious question is then how to explain this result. The work of Thomas Piketty addresses this question, including in his famous book Capital in the 21st Century, which has sold more than 3 million copies. In his book, Piketty provides empirical evidence suggesting that the top few percentile of the population concentrated income and wealth, particularly in the US, UK and other English-speaking countries. One of the reasons for this concentration of wealth is the inefficacy of social mobility policy. Some of you may wonder what social mobility means. In simple terms, this means the ability to move from one social class to another. For instance, the fact that some children from very poor families are able to get out of poverty. Let's get back to Milanovic's result between 1988 and 2008. The second group which gained in these 20 years is the new middle class in a few emerging economies. To be precise, we are talking about 200 million Chinese, 90 million Indians and 30 million each from Indonesia, Brazil and Egypt. This is the group for which we had the fastest rise in income, an 80% increase in real terms. For this emerging middle class, the globalization trend has been favorable, while for the very poor, a lot needs to be done. I must say that I find Milanovic's result very enlightening. In August 2016, Milanovic published a book called Global Inequality, a new approach for the age of globalization at Harvard University Press. In this book, he provided updated results that do not fundamentally modify the analysis between 2008 and 1998. There's even been an acceleration or reinforcement of a main trend. The emerging global middle class continues to grow due to high growth rates in China. Urban China doubled its GDP per capita between 2008 and 2011. The consequence is, for instance, that urban China now has a higher GDP per capita than some European countries, such as Bulgaria, Romania or Lithuania. All in all, Milanovic's results highlight that the lower global poverty and inequality need to be analyzed carefully to understand who are the winners and losers of globalization. We have now established that globalization has affected differently groups characterized by different degrees of wealth, at the expense of the poorest people, which we now know as the bottom billion. While global inequality, the total inequality in the world, is decreasing thanks to this new middle class in emerging countries, national inequalities are rising in many countries, as suggested by Piketty's analysis. National inequalities undoubtedly generate a lot of tension, and we have seen that social comparison negatively affects our well-being. It goes beyond the objective of this MOOC to suggest avenues to curb inequality. For those who are interested in this topic, I would suggest reading Anthony Atkinson's book Inequality. Anthony Atkinson is a professor at the London School of Economics and Political Science. In his book, he includes some original and sometimes radical proposals for action.